Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kate, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to paint this easy winter watercolor landscape. Let's get started. To start this painting, what we're going to do is first draw out our landscape. So we're just going to put in place our horizon line, which is going to be about a third of the way up from the bottom of the page. Just going to lightly draw that in there. And then over on the right hand side, I'm going to draw in my log cabin. So I'm going to create a very thin rectangle to start. And then I'm going to draw a line that is slightly smaller than it right above it. And then bring down my roof sides to where they're coming out just a little bit farther than the main triangle we just drew. And then this one's going to come in a little bit short. Kind of mess around with it till everything's even. We want this actually to be a little farther out. So again, we want it to go past our main rectangle. And then we're going to make a triangle on this side. And then right now, we're going to connect these two, but we are going to erase that line. And then we're going to draw another line right there to kind of give it some depth. And then we're going to bring down and make a little box off to the side to give it that dimension. And then with this, we're just going to make that roof a little bit more pronounced. And then to make this look like a log cabin, you're just going to add some circles down the side. We're going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to do the same thing right here. And we're going to erase this line right here. And then you're going to connect very light line your circles to either side. And then you're going to do the same thing here, all the way up in between the roof. And then we're going to frame out a little curved window right there. And then in the center of our main rectangle, we're going to create a little door. And then right off to the side, we're going to create a small little box. That's going to be our window light. And then we're going to give this little cabin a chimney. So we're going to do 2 lines and then come to the left side and add 1 more line to give it again some depth. And then lightly erase the roof line that's between it. I promise this will be the most detailed part of this painting. And then just add some little lines to the top of the roof. And there we have our log cabin. I promise that is the most difficult part of this painting. All right, and then we are going to leave it like this. And the rest we're going to do with our watercolors, but we needed to have this as our base. The first thing we're going to do with this painting is we are going to paint in our cabin first. So I'm going to take my small detail brush, just because my cabin is very small, and I'm going to dip it into my burnt umber paint mixture, and I'm going to create a light wash. I do not want my first layer to be my darkest. I want to be able to build on top. We're going to leave the roof completely white, And we're just gonna go in and start painting most of the area brown. So leave the door, leave around the light white. You can paint in the circles. And again, I think I said we're leaving the roof completely white. Leave the window white as well. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to paint just the chimney brown. And then I'm going to go back in and I'm going to create a little bit of a darker tone of my burnt umber. I'm going to tap it into the circles. I'm going to drag this color out under the roof. I want it to be nice and dark for the shadow. And then down those circles. I'm just going to bring it out a little bit. Then I want a real dark tone of this burnt umber right under the roof, right here. So I'm trying to get in frame so you guys can see. And then just leave it up to that point, because we do not want it on our roof. We just want the underneath to be seen, and it would be very dark for the shadow it would create. And I'm going to add just a little bit of water to my brush. And I'm going to add it in off to the side because there'd be a little side shadow right there. Just like that. And then I'm going to take a mixture of burnt sienna and yellow ochre. And I'm just going to put that around the window area, around this light area, and around and in the window. Just to make it seem like somebody's home and there is some light. And then I'm going to take that same color, I'm going to really water it down. Make sure there's not too much of my brush. And I'm just going to bring it out as like a shadow from the light, from the window, just a little bit in front of the door as well. Because with the light snow, this would be very noticeable. The light would shine through off onto the snow because we are going to have an evening sky. So like that, we have that light. I'm going to take just the lightest mixture of Payne's Gray. I'm going to then water that down even more. I'm just going to tuck that color in. Right next to that yellow. Just give it that shadow. Just kind of pulling that out around the house. And then in between these two. And you don't have to do it all completely gray. It's okay to leave some nice white spaces. Just like that. And then I'm just going to add some clean water down here just to blend out my shadow marks so that my white paint doesn't have this weird gray sharp line in between the colors of the gray and the white. I want it to all just smooth and blend seamlessly, but this way we'll have white, gray, and then we'll have the yellow shadowing coming out of the cabin. And then really quickly, before I forget, I want to paint my door of the cabin a nice red tone. So I'm just going to take a little bit on my brush, and then I'm just going to apply that to the door. So since I already painted the ground beneath the door, I'm being very careful to not touch where I just painted, because I do not want any of the red to bleed out into my yellow light. And then I'm just going to take a little bit off the center, just like that. All right, and we're going to leave our cabin as is. We're going to let this dry, and then we're going to come in with our night sky. To paint in the evening sky, we are first going to layer the entire sky area with a clean coat of water. So just take whatever size brush that you have. The bigger usually is better, just because it takes less time to fill it up. And we've already let the first layer of paint dry on the snow and on the cabin, but you still want to be very careful not to have the water or the paint we're about to put down touch the cabin or the snow. All right, so I've already mixed together the blues that I want for our night sky. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to go straight into my blue mixture. And I'm just going to add 3 colors together. I want them to be dark. I want it to seem very, very much like the evening. So I'm going to start out with a blue-gray, and then I'm going to go into a green-gray-blue mixture. And then I'm going to paint in the rest that color as I go down, just blending these two together. And if it seems like it's really light right now, don't worry, we are going to go back in and add a little bit of darker tones. I'm just going to be very careful as I go around my cabin that I don't touch it. It's one of the reasons why I did my cabin first, is because whenever I would do my cabin last or second, I would always see myself with my sky going in, thinking I'd be able to cover it up, and it would just never go as well for me. So I like to do my cabin, my house, or whatever piece of interest I'm putting into my painting first. All right, so we're going to go back in while it is still wet. Even if it's starting to dry, that's okay. And we're going to just go back in with another coat. You can even add a little bit of darker tones just to help darken up our sky. Just kind of blend that dark blue. I'm going to get a little bit more pigment into my green. And I'm just blending that in because I don't really want there to be that harsh line there. And then just drag that around and fill up this area. So with the sky, I like to work pretty quickly. Even now, it's like you want it to stay wet to build up on the layers. But if your paper does dry very quickly, you can just re-wet it with some clean water and keep going, so you don't get any weird lines. All right, and then again, while this is still wet, we are going to go into a really dark gray-blue mixture. So mostly Payne's gray, a little bit of blue, and I'm just going to go in and I'm going to make some shadowy trees in the background. And you can see, since my sky is still wet, it just is already blending so smoothly into the background, just like shadow off in the distance. And I'm just using the tip of my brush for this. You don't need to be too detailed. All you need is the basic shape of a pine tree to make this work. So I just zigzag all the way down, start out with a point, start small, zigzag, and then just keep getting wider as I work my way down. And this is just a very easy way to add that depth to your painting. And you want to vary on sizes. You don't want it to be a straight line of trees. you want it to, you want to have some variation in your sizes. I added just a little bit more water because I could tell that this area was starting to dry on me. Just kind of coming back over here, give a little bit more depth. And just kind of play around with your trees. It's okay if they don't look perfect the first time. This is great practice, and this is going to be a back layer. We are going to put some more trees in front of it. So again, don't worry if they're not perfect, because they're really just to add some depth and shadow to our painting. They're not going to be the main tree that everybody's going to be looking at. Just be careful as you start to go behind the cabin, because you do want to be behind it, but you don't want it to bleed in. This area really started to dry, so I'm just going to add some clean water. Just dragging that down. And there we go. So we're going to let this dry, and then we're going to move on to another layer of trees. For our second layer of trees, we are going to take some clean water, and we are going to just add a straight line of that clean water below our horizon line. This is going to just allow, as we put in our next layer of trees, to just kind of blend down into them and give it a nice shadow. We are going to use our dark Payne's Gray blue mixture. I don't want it just to be Payne's Gray. And we are just going to go in around our cabin and create a second layer of these trees. So I'm going to start right by the cabin because I know I want one right here. Need a little bit darker pigment. And then you're just going to start with pointing lines upward. And then as you come down, you're going to fan out. And again, avoid getting on your actual cabin. You want this to look like it is behind it, not in front of it. Go back in with a little bit more Payne's Gray just because it's coming out a little bit more transparent than I'd like. Add a little bit more bristles coming out. Just like that. And then do the same thing, give a little bit more Payne's Gray into the blue. And then I'm going to have a really tall one coming out here, and it's going to come out farther. So this is going to be in front of our cabin. And it's just going to kind of hide off to the side of our painting. So it's okay if it starts to cover our shadow lines a little bit because it is going to be in front. adding a little bit darker tone to cover up that line that I did for the trunk and the guideline of it. Just bring that all the way down. And then I'm going to give it more of an actual tree trunk rather than that stick. Gonna take some clean water. Just gonna blend out right beneath it and just kind of carry that out. I'm gonna do the same thing here, just so it doesn't get too stiff. So I'm just going to show you how I added some trees along the sides here. I just did what we did with these two trees. I took that same color, the Payne's gray and the blue mixture, and I just did the same technique over here on top of our faded trees. Then I took some clean water and I blended out the base to give it that nice shadow. Just to give that depth over in this corner, but not to be bringing it out too far. All right, we are going to let our trees dry, and then we're going to add some final detail to our cabin, and then we're going to add some snow into our sky. So we're just going to add a little bit more shadowing to our cabin, just to give it some more depth. We're going to go back into that burnt umber paint mixture, and we are going to apply it to the right side of our chimney. And you don't really need to let it be even at the bottom. You can leave it kind of jagged. And then we're going to take just a little bit of it and bring it over onto this side. So it's going to be darker, but it's not going to be the exact same shade, just to, again, give it some depth. And then we're going to go back through, and we're going to go by our circles and add this darker color. So kind of outlining those circles. You can do it on either side for this one as well. And then I'm going to take my paint, I'm going to drag that paint just to blend it and drag it around, leaving again a little bit of white space by the light, because we don't want anything to be too sharp, but we want that window to appear bright. Then we're going to take a darker mixture and go right under the roof. And we're going to do the same thing over here again, go right under the roof. Just like that. And then just blend it out a little so it doesn't look too sharp. And then I'm going to take a brighter tone of yellow and I'm just going to drop it right where that window is. So I just feel like the windows need to be a little bit brighter. They looked like they were blending into the brown a little bit too much. So I just added a little bit of lemon yellow on top of the yellow ochre that we already had. And then I'm going to go into that bluish gray mixture we had, and I'm going to really water it down to where it's just going to be a very light wash. And then with barely any paint on my brush, I'm just going to add a little bit of that color to the roof to give some shadowing where we had those pencil lines. So I erased the pencil lines, and I'm just adding that blue color to the top. to make it appear to have shadowing, but still leave a lot of white space so that you can see that there is still white snow. And then what we're going to do is we're going to switch to our size 6 round brush. I'm going to load it up with a lot of paint, white paint, and a lot of water. Dab off anything so it's not going to completely spray. And very close to my painting, I'm going to tap it over to create some snow. And it's okay if it goes over the trees. You don't have to be too picky about where the snow is going to go. And if there's some spaces that didn't get it, you can just add that. But other than that, we are done, and you have yourself a watercolor winter landscape. Hey everyone, thanks for watching today's video. I hope you found this watercolor winter landscape tutorial helpful. If you did, please subscribe to this channel and give this video a thumbs up. If you'd like any extra detail on this painting, head over to my blog, Reflecting Creation. I will have a link in the description box below. Bye!